This is Inspiring Design, where unique innovators come together to share their knowledge, share their insight, and keep us up to date with the latest industry trends. And here's your host, Roshan Senanayake.
Welcome back, guys. I'm here with the head of department for industrial design tech from Ferny Grove State High, Corey Geiskin. Thank you so much for coming on to the show, and welcome. So can you elaborate on a little bit about what your role here at the school and maybe a little bit before that as well?
Yeah, sure. So my role here is head of department of industrial as well as health design. So
Yep.
the old home economics and the old manual arts, I guess, that's been rebranded over the period of the last 20 years
Yep.
or so. And I'm just doing an acting stint at the moment. So it's been a really fun journey the past 9 months or so here.
Yep.
And my the main thing that the admin have wanted me being part of is bringing in more design and design type thinking with our staff.
Yeah. No, that's great. So previous to Ferny Grove, how long have you been in the design education space?
Yep, cool. So, I started out as a cabinet maker and in trade, and went into teaching because my teachers made a bit of a difference. And I was a bit shocked at uni about the design side of things. So it was really cool I actually really shocked but loved it. Instantly hooked.
Yeah.
I love the idea of people creating their own things. I think that maybe that's a bit of my right brain creative side of things that I love to tap into. And so before being here, I've had a number of schools, but I've just spent a long season at another Northside high school and very involved in Re-Engineering Australia's competitions, the F01 and the 4x4 in schools competitions, and working with students doing a whole pile of competitions all around Australia and overseas, and had some great successes with those. And also been involved with the NPDL project, so the New Pedagogies Deeper Learning, and unpacking the creative styles and to being more of a facilitator rather than a director of my lessons.
That's great. That's actually really impressive. So did you have an industrial design background at university?
No, not at all. No.
Right.
So the only university course that I've done myself is the Bachelor of Technology Education. But, through Griffith, back in the day when it was still there. And it was, when I think back on it, it was a pretty progressive course and ahead of itself a fair bit in regards to the design stuff we're supposed to be doing now.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Now that you mentioned a little bit about design thinking in the classroom and the whole thing of teaching rather than facilitation. Now, this is actually something that it's close to my heart as well, where we're trying to teach teachers how to facilitate rather than teach, especially when it comes to design. Do you have any preferred teaching methods or any techniques that you employ or even your teachers might employ?
Yeah, as a trade background, I have to unteach myself the skills of actual production and let go of those. So that's a challenge for me in the classroom all of the time. So as a head of department working with my staff who are all trade background, I also have to work on helping coach them.
Yeah.
So rather than being a manager as a HOD, I'm trying to do more coaching, more mentoring, and helping them on how to be a facilitator in the classroom. And so that looks a lot more about having engaging and challenging tasks with student buy-in so that they come to my class actually ready to learn, wanting to learn, rather than me having to crack a whip and get them to do, lock, step, A, B, C, D, E. So my experience, I guess, in doing F1 in schools and 4x4 in schools where students are emailing me, wanting me in on a school holiday or a weekend or after schools and stuff like that. They're that keen, they're meeting you at the door to your staff room at 7 a.m.
Wow.
They're that engaged. So, and now I'm finding doing more facilitating, especially design style teaching in my classroom. I've got students wanting to be in today I had them before school and at lunchtime again because they're just really keen to achieve their design goal and succeed at it. So it's kind of very exciting.
Yep, that's great to hear. So do you think that's a result of allowing them to explore rather than giving specific specific steps rather than do you think their engagement comes because they're not constrained?
Yeah, there are constraints to a degree. here at Ferning Grove, we're trying to do a bit of a middle road at the moment. So for my teachers who are still learning to come out of being very lockstep and into, teaching each step and stage. If you think about Illustrator, maybe I'll go with Inventor, so they might teach them how to extrude and then cut a corner and maybe do a rotation or whatever. I'm trying to get them to have those teaching. So I've set up a series of videos that can teach the student how to go through all of those, and they're accessible for the students. But once they start doing their own designs, the teacher's more there to help problem solve and assist as they go through with their own design realisation. So it's a bit in the middle. So and certainly the challenge is keeping it short enough that they're getting success, the students that is, and the teachers as well. I think that's really important for us as teachers to see success
definitely.
With our students and the results they're getting, and also having it deep enough. So one of the things I'm working with our guys a little bit is the learning pit. We set them a challenge, but we don't build the bridge over the pit with all of the resources for the students. We've got to let them flounder in the bottom a little bit, and that's that lack of control in a classroom where all the kids are struggling and we don't have the answers for them. That's where it gets hard, and that's where my teachers and myself at times need support to talk about it and realise it's okay. And they do get out the other side. It's wonderful watching students help each other get out the other side as well as the teacher. To give you an example, probably the best one I did at my last school. Loved doing it, and it was while we were under the NPDL framework then. New Pedagogies, Deeper Learning, and the task we set the students was to design a device to assist that could be human or animal. And the diversity of the way those students formed their groups and the tasks, we even had trouble, like every student had to find their own task, and then they did a pitch to get others to join them, and then they had to look at the ethics of, well, who would we choose to help, because we found so many people to help. And
that's great.
It was really, I was totally out of control. I walked to that lesson going, I don't know what I'm teaching today. I really didn't. And so as teachers, myself have had to learn, and I guess that's my role now, is to help my teachers learn that being out of control is actually okay, and the student process of learning and figuring that out. So the biggest problem I found with that unit is the students at the end, when they had realised their projects and finished them, they were upset because they wanted to continue to solve it further for their clients. That's how engaged they got with it. So, it was just, I mean, I had students in tears as they're pitching, and students crying while they're listening to the pitches, and it was. So
it became really their baby.
Yeah. So when we talk about empathy, they had it in spades, and they really were buying in. But it was challenging the whole way on how to continue to set up a classroom space where I'm allowing students to have multifaceted ideas and with lots of different problems, and also being able to resource that. Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. Now, coming from that, I'm so happy to hear that there were students that had that much of empathy and buy-in for that project. Did you find that the ideas that came out of their group work was things that you wouldn't have been able to guide? Do you think that flourished because of their group work and the way that they bought in?
I mean, if I was to guide, depends on what we call guide. So traditionally in, let's say, an industrial tech area, we would make a project. So it might be designing and making a car, for example. So no, I wouldn't have got those kind of results, because I wouldn't have said, oh, you guys are going to make this and you're going to make this. And so they've actually gone out and found a real problem and come back and talked about how they could solve it. So one group of students were trying really hard to figure out how the prosthetic finger they'd designed could interact with the phone, and they were looking at, and they'd done some research on YouTube and stuff to try and find a material that they could put on the end of the finger to make that work. And they figured out what the problem was, but couldn't actually solve it in our timeline. So that was, interesting problems that they were unpacking. But I don't believe if you don't leave it open enough as your open task at the start, they're not going to find those. But there's also this balance of teaching enough skill So these days it might not be hammering in a nail or cutting a piece of timber as the skill anymore. It might be, it could be a researching skill, or it could be a software skill that they're needing to actually realise the solution to their problem. Even VR, all of those types of things. So I had a group of students using VR as one of their solutions to help a young lady who has anxiety in going to public places. So they were designing all of these very busy spaces that sequentially got busier for her to try and overcome her anxiety. So it was just like, really, I would never have set a task like that.
That's brilliant, and it's really funny that you mentioned that, because my cousin, who's involved with the UQ mental, I think she's in the mental health research, and this is one of the key pieces of research that's happening at UQ, where they're working with people with social anxiety to be able to be in the comfort of their own home, put headsets on, and actually slowly build up that routine to first go to the end of the street, and then a little bit around the corner, and then maybe a small shop, then a shopping center. So that's brilliant. That's great.
And unless you have anybody that you know, or a loved one, or have dealt with it yourself, it really is hard to empathize. And I wouldn't have thought it was an issue, that big an issue, until they unpacked it really well. I mean, the challenge for teachers, and I guess for me now as a HOD, is one, finding resources for my teachers that make, because the teaching game's got harder, not easier. So for me, it's a lot about how can I try and make it easier for them. So some resources, and try to keep saying it's okay to play, okay to experiment, okay to get it wrong. With our curriculum development, for want of a better word. But I mean, I have a number of staff who've, they've been teaching for a long time. They've got a lot of expertise and a lot of experience. So the hard part for them is continually changing. They're used to having something set in place and becoming an expert at teaching the content. So the challenging paradigm shift is being an expert in facilitating a diverse way of learning, and it's going to take time. Of
course. Now, what are the steps you've taken to address that problem so far, do you think?
At the moment, we're just changing our very bottom level. So here, a lot of very traditional, not necessarily man arts, a bit of a mixture of design/man arts type curriculum here. So a little bit of design, but a lot is sort of what I call embellishment of a very traditional project. My main area is to try and eventually get a design subject set up here, but it's hard for the students to select that if they've not experienced it. So we've gone all the way back to 7 and 8, and we've rewritten the program, and we're playing in that area. So there's a group of us teachers experimenting and having a go there. Now it is designing a set thing, and we're doing a lot of design in Inventor, and using Illustrator to use the laser cutter and 3D printers to produce we're calling it an alternate energy vehicle, but
that's awesome.
We've limited them to using rubber bands. So effectively, it's a rubber band race car. But and we're seeing mixed results across the 5 classes that are doing it at the moment. And the mixed has mostly got to do with we run into problems with technology, so we can. That gets always in a school. Technology is an issue, whether the students have the technology or whether the technology is working. So the Inventor licensing issues have really hit us this term.
Right.
But also in the difference in teaching style. So as I'm trying now to mentor and coach staff to be a facilitator in a classroom, that's I'm starting to see as the main key for me in helping my staff teach it well.
That's actually one of the things that I, like I mentioned before, try to do with my students at QUT. When it comes to especially the 4th years, where they're at a point where they've got a lot of design skills and they're starting to build their own personality and design style. Whenever they're asking for feedback, sometimes because of the education system that they've gone through, they always revert back to, can you just please tell me what I need to do here?
What the answer is.
Or does this look good, or do you think it works? And I'm like, well, do you think it looks good? Because otherwise you're making a copy of what I think looks good, and that's my design style, not yours. You might think this looks absolutely horrible. I might think the same, but I might think the opposite. So it's always, I think, something that I've found is being aware as a teacher of what our biases are and
Yes.
where that line is, and then being able to go, no, this is, the student needs to figure this out himself, and then allowing them to do that, and then actually asking one or two questions so that it comes out of them and they can trigger, or they can go and look at something and get inspired to find something. So that's the way I've found that facilitation works rather than teaching. So that I'm very happy to hear that's happening here.
Yeah. Well, we're early days.
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
early days, and it is exciting, and it's exciting to be part of helping change that. I don't know if all my staff feel that way at the moment, because they're, the busyness, end of year 12, we're tired, it's term 4, and we run into computer problems. So
Yep.
but I keep, the big one is it's okay to get it wrong. I even say that to my students.
Especially
what
in
if it
design.
doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? I said, I'm okay if it doesn't work. And they're like, what? What do you mean? It's okay that it doesn't work. Can you tell me why it didn't work? And
Do I fail if it doesn't work?
No, they don't. That's it. And they know that. And they know that. So, traditionally an A in our area might have been something that was beautifully presented, well painted, or well polished. And
Yep.
no, it's about the idea and how they got there and what they might do next afterwards. That's really what I'm after. And so that's a bit of a paradigm shift for my teachers as well.
Yep.
It certainly is for our students here.
Yep.
I had a student ask me today, actually, she's got a very different design for her vehicle, and he said, what if it doesn't work? I says, it doesn't matter. And she's like, and so I took her back to what I call the 5 keys to design. So I've unpacked that from the design syllabus for next year, and the 5 keys being, I'll see if I can remember. Here's a test. So here we go. Now I'm stumbling. So technical is one of them. What's another one? Aesthetics. You got social. You've got. I think it's not environmental. Now I've got a mental blank. But yeah, the 5 keys.
Yeah.
I'll get off it, so I stop embarrassing myself.
No, that's all right.
But I said, which one of the 5 keys have you chosen as your focus for your project? And so she said, it's aesthetics. And I said, well, does it look good? Oh, I don't know. What do you think? I said, well, no, it's about what you think.
Yeah.
You're the designer. She says, yeah. And I said, so the fact that it doesn't work, how many stars did you give technical? Because that would be whether it works or not, yeah? And she says, I actually only gave it a 1 star in my brief. I said, well, then it doesn't need to work, does it, to fulfill your brief? So I try to tie it back to that as well, what the student-generated design brief is sort of, we're loosely playing with that at the moment and trying to, go from there.
No, that's great. And I remember you mentioning the big amounts of empathy that the students had and the buy-in with those design competitions.
Yeah.
Do you find that students, when they have some sort of a cause and empathizing with that end user, they then are more attached to the project, they care about it more, and do you think the design process is more rich when they go through that?
I definitely do. The biggest trick is getting buy-in in any educational sense. So if you have the students buying in and turning up, I always know how successful my classes are by how many will turn up when I open it up early.
Yep.
That's always my key indicator that by giving them the variety of being able to solve the task in different ways, so I know we're not quite there with all of our curriculum yet, but the more we develop our ability to facilitate learning, will open up those a bit more.
Yep.
To get the biggest hurdle, I think, is them actually learning some software and programs to be able to solve it. So for me, in the current project that we're doing, where they've got to learn some decent inventor skills to actually solve the problem, we're actually they've got to do gear generators and make the gears actually sync and work.
Yeah, great.
So there's a little bit of thinking in that, and then we start to talk about 1:2 ratios or 1:3 ratios, why you might do differences there. So that's a bit of a mind bender for our 8s and 7s.
Yeah.
But once they cross that knowledge area and they actually start to have success in inventor, that's the tipping point. So I always talk to them about the tipping point. You haven't yet reached the tipping point of I can do this.
Yeah.
So some take a bit longer than others with that.
So it's almost hitting that glass ceiling.
Yeah, that's a good description too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's something that a couple of my mentors have always told me. It's a glass ceiling's a tricky thing because it's glass, you can see through it, so you don't realize that you're stuck. So you almost have to have a level of self-awareness that there is something, and then you're not moving forward.
Yep.
So it's I think as teachers, it's always trying to understand whether your student is at a glass ceiling and help them break through that. So that's great. That's great. You mentioned some technological issues.
Yep.
And obviously the rapid change in technologies is obviously a huge impact, especially in design with, the ridiculous amount of softwares and 3D printing and laser cutting and CNC writing, and now VR and AR and all these things. Even recently I spoke to a teacher that had the term MR confused with AR. And so, little misunderstandings like that can potentially confuse a student. So what do you guys do here at Ferny Grove to tackle that technology change, or stay ahead? Yes.
I have to say I feel very lucky to be here because the school's just had a massive renewal of our building, and within that, the HOD that I've been acting in place of, Danielle poured in some really, really good equipment. So we've got a wonderful printer over there. It's an $80,000 printer that's doing some crazy cool stuff. So with our 3D printed gearboxes, they get done in one piece. Weld them out. Melt the wax out and they work. But for the staff, that's been a big learning curve, how to use that piece of equipment. Mm-hmm. So there's been a lot of learning for our guys here. So some of it is about making sure that we have enough in our budgets as schools,
of course,
to have that gear in there. And then obviously admin want to know, are you going to use it? So as a head of department, the challenge is making sure that we can show that we're using the small amount of technology we've got, so that we get the next stuff. So we've got some laser cutters, we've got the really good 3D printer and some cheaper 3D printers for low fidelity. Yep. And we have a new CNC machine as well for. It's not a big furnishings type one. It's more of the enclosed Denford one for doing F1 cars, but it can also do all of the. We've got a number of different setups that inside of it for other options. But also to go on with that, I know I did touch on it. We're showing a potential for more investment. So I know here at Ferny Grove that the boss loves it when we're playing with more technology, and will always support it. In fact, we're just getting a brand new building built.
That's awesome.
Have all the STEM hub stuff happening up in there as well. So, it's the big buzz at the moment. So I think as industrial technologists, specifically as teachers in that area, there's a massive push for it. So it's our chance in the sun to actually get out and play and get a lot of resources and facilities and equipment to go that next step.
That's great.
I think it's ours to grab, and we're silly not to as faculties, to be honest. Yeah. Playing with robotics, the whole it's a massive field.
Work becomes a playground all of a sudden.
Drones, all of that. Yeah. And so we're lucky we've got nearly I don't know an emerging technology we don't have yet, which is really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But we don't know how to play with all of them yet. There's just like too many of them at the moment. So keeping ahead of it has a lot to do with us as teachers breathing enough to be able to do it, and that's really hard. Yeah,
no doubt. In the middle of 1,000 other things, it's not just about that. I feel your pain. Have you had much experience in VR and AR in the classroom yet?
I have a little bit myself personally, but as teachers, not yet. It's really exciting to see Tim having a chat with you about doing some of that. We're looking to embed that into a project for Year 9, so we're starting to play with a bit of a Year 9 curriculum that flows on from our Year 7, 8. And one of those will be where they're designing their own retreat for a client. So, and looking to VR that. So I'm really excited how that one's going to pan out. And it's good to see him getting keen. I hope he, sees it through. It'll be, it's exciting to see that. But, making sure my budget has enough to, to be able to facilitate it. Yeah, that's always a challenge too.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's unlike, it's same as other technologies. It has to come to a point where these things will get more affordable. 10 years ago, I think actually not 10 years, maybe about 15 years ago, a small USB stick with 256 megabytes was almost $100. Now they don't even make them. Now 8 gigs is about $4 or $3 or something. So it's the same with this technology as well. Like the fact that the Oculus Go has come out for a couple of $100 is a perfect indicator of that.
Yeah. And it's so portable. I mean, we bought an Oculus Rift.
Yep.
And it's, you've got to have the big machine that drives it.
Yep.
And costs thousands to do the machine and the Rift.
Yep.
I mean, it's so static.
It is.
But the Go is amazing. They're just, yeah, I'm looking forward to playing with them a bit ourselves.
No, definitely. And there are some schools that I've visited where one year 10 kid had actually modeled the entire high school in Minecraft.
Yep.
And he was so proud. We did a design thinking workshop with the students, and then right afterward, he's like, "Hey mate, can you come and like check this out?" He gave me the headset, put it on, and I went around actually shooting. There were sheep everywhere, and I went around shooting and missed and destroyed a couple of his buildings. But he's like, "That's fine. I can rebuild it." But the amount of thinking, it was incredible, and the head of department was just so happy. Apparently, he had done most of this during his lunchtimes. So all the other students were at lunchtime after this, and he was there playing with this even more. So it's really great to see them buying in when they've been given the chance as well. So it's quite enriching as well. Like the happiness in their face, and they almost like have a chest that's swell up with pride as well. So that's really incredible.
Yeah, I think one of the tricks, it's finding the balance of the length of a project. And I probably shouldn't even use the word project. Maybe I should use the word challenge or
design challenge. Yeah,
design challenge, because if you don't give it enough length, you don't get any depth. And they don't get stuck in the pit and have to figure out how to get out of it. I think that's a really important part of the process. Yeah.
So in your experience, how long do you think has been like an ideal one? Like just based on what you've found so far?
Almost a semester. It's nearly a full. It really, longer is better. And I've heard arguments for otherwise, but I just find as long as there's enough chunks in there for them to get success along the way with a bit of scaffolding, to me longer is better. But no, that's my personal argument. I have seen some really good shorter ones of breaking down the elements of design, so you're learning the processes but I actually try to embed those as like checkpoints along the way where we might unpack those as we go through over a couple of years, if that makes sense, so that by the time they get to year 10 they've got this larger skill set, but they know how to get the depth. I think without the depth we really are missing it, and I don't know what that looks like at university. I hope I'm on the right track.
Well, even at university, it's semester based, so usually the units until masters right now, I can't speak for UQ, but at QUT the entire bachelor's is semesters, so 6 months per project, or I guess more like five months, and then they move on to the next one. However, in masters now they're doing a whole project in the year, so I think you're onto something in terms of the timing. It is very aligned, so even when they then enter the university environment, it's going to feel at home because they're used to doing that length of period, and they have another 4 years or 3 years doing this similar sort of a time period. So that's great.
I think, like, I've heard a few people say, our younger students don't have the patience. They're not going to get the patience if we don't go there. I think if the task's engaging enough, and that's the trick, they'll want to get in there and figure out the problem. And we traditionally, I think we have this predisposition to want to give the students lots of take-home items to promote our subject area. So we'll do a 5-minute keyring design, which is really just it's not really design, it's draw a shape. That's primary school. We draw a shape in primary school. Grade 1.
No, definitely.
So to draw a shape and then 3D print it, to me, it's not really design. To design a smart keyring that's 3D printed, that's design, sure. That's got some really good integrated features, but that will take you much more than 3 or 4 weeks learning how to do a pad and a pocket in Venice. So, it's when you start getting multiple components and things working together. I love teamwork as well. I love when students work in groups, because then you have those students, like you just mentioned, the one that's really good with the VR and able to draw this crazy. So I can think of a number of students in my past classes where there might be that nerdy kid, you just can't seem to get them to do anything. They don't seem interested.
Yeah.
And, might be failing maths. But all of a sudden you give them the Inventor program and they just get it, or they might get the VR. And the other students who might be really good at doing research but they just can't get Inventor or VR type software, they've got this, they work together just so wonderfully well. So it's group work's really cool.
I'm very happy to hear that, actually, and it's the same as university. They do struggle to coexist in group environments sometimes, just because at a secondary level they might have not had enough experiences. So it's good that you're putting them in that environment at an early stage.
Trying to. And so at the moment here within our curriculum, not a whole lot. So how I've currently structured my class. I'm not sure what the other 4 teachers are doing it, but I get them to work together on solving some of those problems. So I have a student helpline at the front of the room. So I don't wait for hands to go up and go help them. I say, put your name up on the board, and I will work through the list. So I just go around and it's almost like going to the Apple store, isn't it? But anyway, so I'll go and help that person. But often I'll call out, that person, like it might be Hannah, and she'll be like, "Oh no, I've solved it already." So I get the cross-out name up, and we all kind of cheer because there's one less person in the list. It's kind of really cool. And they've started to learn. To start with, they would just sit there and wait till I got there. But after waiting 20 minutes, they realised, well, that was probably a waste of time. So I might actually try and figure it out. And so about 50% of my students figure out the problem before I get there because they're helping each other. You should,
if you want to improve the tech in your class, you could actually get them to do it. Yeah, do it in Twitter.
It's so cool. I should.
Put up a hashtag, Corey, hashtag CG, design tech or something. Yeah. And tell them to use the hashtag. They'll get right on it.
Dude, I need you to show me. I don't hashtag and I don't use Twitter, so I'll have to have a look at that.
Right after, I'll show you, actually. Yeah.
Righto. It's a challenge for me.
Yeah, it's something that we sometimes do in our workshops, just when it's too many people to manage questions. So we just go, here, use the hashtag, and you can see it. So there you go.
Nice. I love learning new stuff.
Now, you mentioned that the patience with the students and teaching them the patience is an important thing. Now, this is something even university students are struggling with, where with the new technology and being able to have information, at the palm of their hand and with a click of a finger or a swipe of a finger, it's hard for us we find that even good students at first year would ask me questions like, a week before the assignment, do we need elevations for that? This was for an architectural assignment, and now she's actually one of the top of the class students, and I'm wondering, why would you ask me that? And then she's like, because I wasn't sure. And I'm like, okay, good that you asked me the question, but have you read the assignment sheet?
Have you read the task sheet?
It's 2 pages.
Yeah.
And at the bottom of the second page, there's a dot point that says floor plan elevation section.
Yeah.
And she's like,
Yeah, I get that all of the time with my design problems. Yeah. All of the time. They would rather the easy answer.
Yeah.
So
I think that must be a challenge, right? So how do you constantly tell them, be patient, trust the process, or is there a different technique that you use?
With that one, I will say read the task sheet.
Yeah, of course.
So like at the moment, one of the ones we're doing, in my Year 10 design class, I've challenged them to low prototype a shell to fit on a rock crawler, which is the basic level for 4x4 in schools.
Yeah.
It's such a good little project because it has to be a certain height, certain width, certain length, and when you go across some rough terrain, the wheels can't hit the body, and it must cover everything underneath. So it's just got some real simple specifications, but when you actually apply the geometry to a physical product, the challenges come out for them 3-dimensionally with their prototyping. So I can see when the student brings it up to try it that it's wrong, and I'll go, it's wrong. Why is it wrong, sir? Well, that's for you to read in the task sheet. But I can tell you it's wrong. So, because you know what it looks like when it's right. And so it's kind of, it is for me patience to keep reminding them that they need to figure it out. And so it's funny because other students will then yell it out in the class. And they actually feel a bit silly that they didn't know what it was. Yes, patience, but it's also patience for us as teachers, I think, in it's specifically around the area of we teach better when we actually don't know all of the answers.
That's a very interesting saying, actually.
If I go back to that engineered to assist unit that I did, I only got to do it once, but it was with a bunch of year 8s and 9s, and it was brilliant because every day they would ask me something I didn't know more than once. But because I could not give them the answer, they went elsewhere for answers. So I encouraged them to find experts. So some of them were talking to QUT, that the lady in there who designs
Natalie Wright?
prosthetics. Yeah.
Yep.
So that they went out and found these experts that gave them this depth of knowledge I never would have. So I guess I let go of my fear of not knowing all the answers.
Yep.
And that's really, I think that's a really that to me is the biggest hurdle in regards to being a facilitator rather than the fount of all knowledge.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's true. Being able to admit when you don't have the answers, and something similar happened with my 4th years as well. I've been out of the architectural conventional practice for quite a number of years now, so Revit's not my forte. That's why I don't go anywhere near it. That's why I don't train it. But they showed me a couple of different things, and they actually taught me something. And another student showed me about this new vent system that's there, and they had documented it in their construction set. And I asked them, when I'm marking up their drawings, I asked him what that was, and he rattled off this description, and I'm like, all right, cool, where'd you learn that? And he's like, just at work. This is apparently better than normal vents. Googled it, he pulled up a screen, and he's like, yep, this is it.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's brilliant, that's great. And I'm like, there you go, you should run the class, not anymore.
Well, it's often what I'll say to a student, YouTube it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately in EQ schools, YouTube's blocked. There's a good reason for it, because they would probably be just watching all of their streaming.
Definitely.
All of their subscriptions, rather than educational YouTube. But often if I have a problem like that, that's my first protocol, Google or YouTube, and I'll often the next lesson come back. So I might not know it that lesson, but the next lesson I come back and go, well, I was asked this question. What do you guys think about this as an answer? And so I'll put it to the class for a conversation based on it.
Yeah.
So my classes also get used to me having those facilitator, like larger group conversations around an issue a group or a student's experiencing in their design. And I'll often do that if a student in my student helpline asks for a question. I go, you know what, this is something that everybody should know, and it's a new one, because I'm nowhere near an inventor expert. I say to my year 7s and 8s, they'll be better than me by the time I finish this.
Definitely.
And they are. They never believe me, but they always are, and they always laugh at me at the end of it. But I'll often show them how to fix that problem that student was doing, and instantly I get another 3 names ripped off the whiteboard. It's...
No, that's it. That's it's very rare, and I love the fact that you're again facilitating the conversation and getting that group discussion going. It's very similar to tertiary level education, so that's perfect.
That's great to hear.
Yeah,
because that's the goal, right?
That is, and it makes their transition actually much smoother rather than a disruptive one where they have to then figure things out again. Yep. So one of the last things I wanted to ask you was, design is obviously, it's becoming, or I've been told that it's becoming part of the very key 21st century learning skills.
Sure is, yeah.
And especially design and the things that stem off that, and being able to understand it. And design used to be this thing where you're in a faculty, but in the corner, you're the man arts guys or the graphics guys. Yeah. You don't know anything about health or science. The fact that now in the industry, design is literally the center point of health or law or business or anything. How do you see, do you have any comments on how design is seen in those industries, as well as how jobs that don't exist now, that might in 5 years' time, how design might play a role in that?
Yeah, I think there's a number of, it's a big question.
It is.
So, there's a number, like our school's still quite traditional. So we would still be considered that, more, and we have another problem that sits within that as well, but we are still not considered central to all of that, but we certainly have a number of people that will. So the STEM program is going to start to unroll, and then people are really going to see the value of what our faculty does in the area of design, because you cannot do STEM without having to design something. So they'll start to see that design thinking and the ability to help that kick in immensely. And we're not involved in STEM. We're crazy. We legit are, because our numbers are going to dwindle and we won't have any jobs. But the other challenge we really are faced is we still have to deal with the whole preparing students for industry, as in trades and so forth and so on. So we've got that very distinct split when we hit either year 10 or year 11, and so having teachers that can teach both those areas is actually probably my greatest challenge at the moment. So a trade teacher might just want to teach that type of style of teaching, and I get it. I understand why, and I totally respect them. They got a lot of skill in doing that, but also being able to teach design in the same faculty is quite a challenge. And I'm not sure which way that's going to go at the moment, especially with the training and preparing people. But I definitely can see, having done a number of different design projects, how much it does fit into just about any type of business out there. I don't think schools are yet wholesomely on board with the power of design and how that can fit into so many different teaching areas. So at the moment, I am getting a lot of faculties coming and asking, can we help with this? And even though my first response is, no, I'm too busy, inside my head, I'm also very aware of that's actually a role we can play in the design and be able to help other faculties. So to give you an example, the science faculty is currently working on, they're getting the students to design a creature and they're making them out of clay. And I said, well, we could teach you guys how to actually make those way cooler than that. And there's so many different options. And I've sort of started talking to those teachers, and they're like, oh wow, that would be amazing, because it makes it so much more real. So having a lot of those types of conversations. So I think it's growing. I think that this next 10 years is going to be very, very interesting. I think the national curriculums help steer us to a strong design basis, but there is, of course, those very traditional skills for trade areas that we need to be very mindful of as well. Because we want smart people doing trades too.
No doubt. That's it's very interesting. I was lucky enough to meet with the Google program director from Sydney, and she did this STEM education system keynote at the Myriad conference that was earlier on this year. And one of the things was this, and she rattled off a whole bunch of 21st century skills, and they were nothing like the subject matters that we know. Even myself didn't know.
Absolutely. That 21st century skills, where we're getting students to think for themselves, is really, really challenging. And if you bring that across into all of those other areas, the amount of technology that's now coming into those sectors where I mentioned the trades is insane. So absolutely, those 21st century skills and being able to teach them well, I think we are front and centre of that as well. I mentioned STEM lots, but not 21st century skills, but I just think they come hand in hand.
Definitely. And we're similar to yourself at that staff level. We've heard stories of faculties collaborating together, and they're starting to have that shift as well. One of the example schools was in the Sunny Coast. Their e-learning HOD is actually now getting literally PE teachers, science teachers, maths teachers, English teachers to come and actually go through the design thinking process and train themselves so that they understand that this is not just for design, this is actually a holistic way of thinking.
It is,
across the board.
No, that's really good. It is, No, very true. And it's a challenge. So I'm probably not playing in the 21st century skills as much as I could be here yet. But I think as the STEM ball starts to roll a bit quicker and a bit heavier here, it's going to really come front and centre. But it's happening intrinsically in our classrooms at the moment. No, that's great. I think we've reached our time, so thank you so much for coming on board and really insightful things. I really love the fact that there's a real effort being made for facilitation rather than teaching in here at Ferny Grove, and I'm keen to see how things progress in the next couple of years. Me too.
Thank you so much for
pleasure.
your time.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.